My president is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was elected in 1932, when almost everyone was poor. So pretty much just like now, but without the internet.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We're your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
And me.
This week we are talking about Annie from 2014. Pause the podcast.
You listened to last week's, so no.
I think you know what's going to happen.
As Roger Ebert said.
Yeah, so after we recorded last week's episode, I read this review. For some reason I looked up Roger Ebert's 1982 review of Annie, and he talks about he gave it 3.5 stars. So he liked the spectacle.
It's astonishing that he gave it 3.5 stars, but considering the review he
writes all sorts. He talks about the particulars. He says, in the particular, it has all sorts of problems, and I guess the only way to really enjoy the movie is to just ignore the particulars. The adventures she gets herself into are questionable. I've never thought of Oliver as a particularly realistic musical, but at least when its little hero said, "Please, sir, more food," there was a hint of truth. Annie has been plunged into pure fantasy, into the mindless sort of musical boosterism that plays big for Broadway theater parties, but almost always translates to the movie screen as sheer contrivance. Bear that in mind.
Yes.
Annie is not about anything. It contains lots of subjects such as cruel orphanages, Great Depression, scheming con man, heartless billionaires, and President FDR, but it isn't about them. It's not even really about whether Annie will survive her encounters with them, since the book of this musical is so rigorously machine-made, so relentlessly formula. It's one of those movies where you can amaze your friends by leaving the auditorium, standing blindfolded in the lobby, and correctly predicting the outcome.
Amaze your friends.
Yes.
I do like that. I think we did hint at that last week. Because it is very formulaic.
It's interesting, but
that's fine for a musical, but for a film,
this version is trying to go more realistic, and that was a fantasy world, right? The 1982 version was a real fantasy.
I would say so, yeah.
Universe with that futuristic helicopter that doesn't exist. All that kind of stuff, all the trimmings of it were like
and Oliver Warbucks doesn't behave like a real person.
Yeah.
There are people in it that don't behave like real people.
Yeah.
Miss Hannigan, arguably, she's so over the top.
Yes.
As kind of like a sexual predator slash
drunk
slash child abuser.
Yeah.
That after watching this week's episode, I was tempted to change last week's episode's vote.
Interesting. I was feeling a bit that way too, but we'll get to. So we're not really going to cover the comic this week. If you're interested in that, listen to last week's episode. I did read a bit more myself this week. I read because what had happened was during Harold Gray's lifetime, he had put out 2 paperbacks of Annie strips.
Right.
One was Cosmic City, which we read, and one was an earlier serial, I think from the 20s, in which Annie's already living with Daddy Warbucks, and his cruel wife is still there, and she's brought in another child, this little Lord Fauntleroy type named Selby, who is actually scamming with this count from Europe, who's actually the brother of a dead count, and is like an imposter, and they keep exposing his schemes, like he tries to frame a jewel robbery on Annie and stuff, and he cheats at cards, and he keeps getting exposed, but he's still living in Daddy Warbucks' house for some reason. Finally, Daddy Warbucks is all depressed, and then he said, because he's not getting along with Mrs. Warbucks is threatening to leave, so Annie says, well, I have to run away so they can be together. Again, it's the same thing every time. I can't interfere with them, so she runs away, and then he goes and finds her and brings her home. She's been living with poor people, by the way, while she was away. Again, just the same thing again and again.
Yep.
I also want to mention that I did listen to my Deconstructing Comics episode about Annie from maybe 2011 or so.
Our sister podcast, as it were.
Or mother-parent podcast, something like that. Anyway, and I was a little bit more positive. I think I had read some earlier years.
This is when you did on the Deconstructing Comics.
On Deconstructing Comics. I was a little bit more positive about the strip because something I didn't pick up reading this week. I don't know why, but I did quite like the sound of the dialogue coming out.
Well, this was an earlier strip, the 20s, perhaps?
Yeah, 20s. And but reading the Fauntleroy stuff, the Selby stuff, it was just a chore to get through. Again, but I did, having listened to, being reminded of what I liked about it, the one aspect that I liked about it, And then reading it again with that in mind, I did kind of like the way he wrote Annie's dialogue, especially actually all the characters' dialogue. I guess maybe that was the one positive, but it's really. And then I read a couple of like maybe 10 strips from 37 in an issue of Comics Review, and Daddy Warbucks is so generous, altruistic. It's ridiculous. Like, that's not how you become a billionaire. You cannot become a billionaire by treating people nicely. I don't believe it's possible.
Because in Gray's world, he's a paragon of humanity.
Yes, exactly.
Because the best people are the ones that have become rich. But that's patently false in our world.
Yes. I don't think you can get to that level of richness without hurting people along the way. I just don't think it's possible.
What's Gough Whitlam, Australian Prime Minister, said, only the impotent are truly pure.
Huh. That might be true.
So if you've amassed that kind of wealth and power, you're corrupt in some respect.
So let's start with this movie from 2014. So this is 10 years old. Somehow in my mind it was a lot newer.
Amazing that it's 10 years old.
Yeah. Directed by a guy named Will Gluck.
Yes.
I looked him up, and the year before this, he directed the remake of About Last Night.
Yes, he did.
With their all-black cast.
Interesting, because he himself is not black.
He's not a black man, but he directed this all-black version of About Last Night, the remake, which was also a version of a David Mamet stage play from the 70s.
Yes, I saw this, and I thought that this must be why he got this job.
Must be.
I couldn't find any...
We need a white guy to direct this black movie. Who can we get? Get that Gluck guy that made About Last Night.
Because all the producers are...
Yeah.
People of colour, they're black. It's Jay-Z, Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yeah.
All the main cast are all black. You know, with one or two exceptions.
Well, I'd say our two main players.
Rose Byrne and Cameron Diaz would be the exceptions.
Yes, and Bobby Cannavale is also a main player. Although I didn't think he was going to be.
He's a bit of an antagonist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and yet the director is Will Gluck, this guy that did Easy A.
Right.
And I think another film he did, Friends with Benefits.
Okay, right.
I know these films because actors from Easy A and Friends with Benefits show up in cameos.
Oh.
And the cameos are so odd.
Yes.
That...
The cameos in this movie are weird.
I thought to myself, why are these cameos occurring? Yes. And when you go to the Wikipedia page, it's all clear because they all appeared in stuff where...
Michael J. Fox was in some TV show or something?
The Michael J. Fox show that ran from 2013 to 2014, I think. Yes? Or perhaps 2012 to 2013. That's why Michael J. Fox is in this. Presumably as cross-promotion for this show that he was making with Will Gluck at the time.
Patricia Clarkson is in it for 1 second.
Yes.
Patricia Clarkson. Why?
I saw that. Her hand gets burned by a phone. It's
just a throwaway.
It's just a cameo.
At 5 seconds.
Because she's worked with Will Gluck. He said, "Come and be in my Annie musical. Come and do a cameo. It'll be great. This movie's got nothing else going for it." Oh dear.
Okay, so we get the studio logos opens with orchestra tuning, which I thought was interesting.
Especially since the orchestra doesn't feature in most of the songs, but
no, yes, that's a double weirdness. What a weird throwback to. It seems almost like the overture from '82, but there's no orchestra music in this movie.
It's so nuts. I read. There's a review quoted on the Wikipedia page that says this film aggressively tries to both be the musical and not be the musical.
Yes. It's really trying to... You can see the updating, quote-unquote, updating happening in real time.
Yeah.
Every decision. How can we make this 2014?
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, the social media stuff. Oh, we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Okay, so we start with a bait-and-switch moment where we get this redheaded girl at the front of her class giving a speech about her favorite president.
And she taps. She does a tap dance.
Yeah.
She talks about... Except her favorite president is... Who is it?
It was somebody from the 1800s.
I think it's William Henry Harrison, the guy that died...
Yes. Okay.
The guy that died of pneumonia after contracting it during his inauguration speech.
That's right. But, and her name is Annie. The teacher says, "Thank you, Annie."
She's the first Annie. And then we get Annie B, which is our Annie. And our Annie, who is... played by Quvenzhané Wallis. There was a lot of buzz around her when this film came out because she had, I think a year or so earlier, appeared in a fantasy film.
Okay.
The name of which escapes me, but for which she received an Academy Award nomination. making her the youngest person ever to be nominated for that particular award at age 9. A record she still holds.
Okay.
She gets up, and her president is FDR.
So now we got a speech about how great FDR is. No, okay, so I want.
Okay, so fine. Okay, so first of all, we've. Sorry, go. You go ahead, and then I'll go.
I want to say first of all, who's coming into this movie and going to be surprised, going to be tricked by that redheaded Annie?
I don't think that's it.
You've seen the poster before you came into the movie. You know what movie this is.
I don't think it's bait and switch. I feel this is a bit mean-spirited.
Oh, it's saying, this ain't your daddy's Annie.
Exactly. That's what I think this is. And there's a couple of other things that happen like that during the film too.
Right, okay.
So, it's like, because the whole class groans as well.
Yeah, right.
They hate redheaded Annie.
Okay.
It's like, look at this daggy shit.
Yeah.
She's tap dancing. She's so perky.
Yeah, right.
Ugh.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. And then we get the speech about how great FDR was. This is in the first minute of the movie. And as we talked about last week, this is anti-Annie, Little Orphan Annie, the comic strip.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not anti-Annie the musical and the 1982 film, which is very much pro-FDR.
Yes. And yet this movie has a nod or two to Harold Gray's comic strip, more than the 82 movie ever did.
Really? I'm looking forward to hearing more about that.
Okay, so she goes out, school ends, she goes out on the street. She says something to her friend about how she doesn't believe in luck, or she makes her own luck, or something like that.
Not really followed up.
Not really followed up, and also I don't know if it's much like... Well, she does talk about luck a lot in the comic strip, but she also is a go-getter. I guess it's a bit like...
Oh, yeah, you're right. This film is really... We're anticipating things here, but you're right. This film boosts hard work and graft as the way to achieve success.
That's right.
It's a very Grey-esque kind of
message. It is, a little bit, yeah, it is. It's there.
Much more so than 82 and the musical. That's interesting. In fact,
I think in 82... I mean, we had that scene where when Miss Farrell comes in, Annie kind of insinuates herself into getting chosen, right? So she's kind of making her own path. She has some agency in that moment.
But it's not obnoxious.
No
one's talking about how you just gotta work hard, kid.
Yeah.
It's only lazy people that are poor.
So now she is on her way home, and we get the opening credits, and we get a medley of all the famous songs.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen throughout the course of the movie is the songs are going to become less and less recognizable from... They'll start out... The first couple will start out sounding like the songs you know, but the further you get into the movie, the more you won't even realize it was a song, like the Put a Smile on Your Face song or whatever that one was. Is like, I didn't recognize that until the last line.
Or the first few bars or the first few lines will be recognizable, and then quickly it changes.
Yes.
That's very true.
So we don't have here at least we have a little bit of the songs. Okay, she gets back to her foster home. So it's not an orphanage.
Because orphanages don't exist in 2014.
Right.
Not in America anymore.
Right. And this foster home is run by Miss Hannigan, who is played by Cameron Diaz.
Comic book movie Oblivion.
Honorable mention.
Because she was in The Mask just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Woefully miscast.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Very cartoonish. Playing it really, this is not Mask or Being John Malkovich Cameron Diaz. This is Charlie's Angels Cameron Diaz. This is pretty rough.
It's not the role for her.
No. In fact, I kept thinking there's a woman who works at the social worker who works at the office. She should have been in that role.
Or whatever. Yeah. Yes.
Every time she was on screen, I was like, why isn't that actress playing the
She's doing a Russian accent for some reason. Do a lot of Russians work in social services in New York? I don't know. But Cameron Diaz, I have nothing against Cameron Diaz. I think she's a fine actor.
Yes.
She is not a convincing Miss Hannigan.
No.
She's supposed, for one thing, she's supposed to be ugly.
This is crazy. This is crazy.
You can't make Cameron Diaz ugly.
Even in Being John Malkovich, when she's supposed to have that frizzy hair and be unattractive. Are you kidding? Like, it's...
She looks fantastic. And much like 1982 Miss Hannigan, Carol Burnett, she's a vamp. Yeah. Like, she's vamping all over people, trying to score with them. And they're all pretending like they're not interested.
But way to say yes.
But she's so hot.
Yes.
This was some hard acting by those guys.
This
was an acting challenge.
I actually believe this movie is full of beautiful people that are miscast. Like, across the board.
Yeah.
She's the first one we get. I did laugh out loud when she made a joke about how she used to be in CNC Music Factory. For some reason, that was really funny to me. I don't know why, but I laughed.
You'll have to unpack that. So what does that mean?
You remember the band CNC Music Factory? Everybody dance now. So she has this whole routine where she was once in a band. It was C plus C plus H Music Factory.
And she got kicked out just before
they went on stage.
Yeah.
On Letterman or something, she got kicked off. Or it was Arsenio Hall, I think. She got kicked out of the band right before they went on Arsenio Hall. And I laughed at that joke.
That's good.
Then the rest of it was so cartoonish. So we meet the other foster kids. We find out about the locket. There's also a note. Oh, so before she got home, Friday night she goes to this restaurant, this Italian restaurant where her parents had dropped.
We don't know why, but we don't know this at the time.
Yeah.
We just know that she keeps going to this Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
Where they serve cannoli, and she sits outside it for a couple hours, and then the maitre d' brings her a cannoli and says, "Sorry, not this week."
Yes.
And it's a bit weird.
And then she says, "I just come for the cannoli," which is maybe a reference to The Godfather.
Maybe. But this does pay off, unlike some other stuff in the film, which absolutely doesn't.
Yeah. So when she gets home, we learn about this note that her parents left with her.
Yeah.
And she has the half locket, as in the musical, I'm assuming. We get the song, the Betcha that song. They sing that song. And Miss Hannigan comes in and says, "Less singing," which she said in 82, and I'm guessing in the musical, and once again shows that these kids are actually singing out loud in this universe.
This is a tricky one. This is another thing that happens. It's specifically, only Cameron Diaz's character does it. Only Miss Hannigan does it. She often remarks on the way people are singing, which is odd. No one else does it, but she does. She says to the girls, "Why are you singing? Do I hear singing? Stop that singing." And then later on,
when she has a song, she has a number with Bobby Cannavale later in the movie, and then later after that, she says, "I danced with him."
Yeah, and she says, "Are you singing at me?" is another thing she said.
Right.
And again, I don't know. This feels...
And that scene is weird because in that.
They keep cutting back.
They cut back to them having a conversation at the table as if it's a dream they're singing.
You can't do this. You can't have it both ways. You can't tap your nose and say...
I agree. It was very confusing in that scene to imply that she was fantasizing about singing and dancing with a guy.
And then
or that was the metaphor of the conversation.
But we also get hard... as though it were the metaphor. But we get hard cuts between the song and dance and them just sitting at the table talking as though the dance number was a representation of what they were talking about.
Yes, exactly.
But then, as you say, later on she says, "Oh, I can't believe I danced with him." Ugh. This, to me, is more... It's a little bit more like what they were doing in that introductory sequence with Little Red-Headed Annie. It's like, can you believe that this is a musical?
Oh, right.
Like they don't have confidence.
right.
They don't have confidence to just make a musical without also hating on it at the same time. And it doesn't endear me. It doesn't endear me to the film, this kind of thing.
So now we get the Hard Knock Life song because Miss Hannigan comes in and says, "Clean this place
This is pretty good, this number.
It kind of is, but the dance routine...
Much less good than the 82 one.
And when I watched 82, I was worried about the kids because I was like, oh my god, those kids must have worked 12-hour days to get this dance routine down.
Well, we know
These
they
little
did.
kids.
We know they did because they changed the laws.
Yes. And I was like, oh man, I was impressed by the dance moves of these kids, but I was...
It doesn't hold a candle to 82.
No.
But there is some good... I like that we've got some... diegetic sounds, where they're banging a mop on the floor.
This is a thing I should have mentioned earlier. When she walks home over the opening credits, everything like the jackhammer in the street is timed with the music.
It's not bad.
It's a bit like Baby Driver, I guess, a little bit, which also had Jamie Foxx in it, where, the gunshots are happening in time with the music that they're listening to and stuff like that.
Driver.
No, of course not, but they're kind of trying to do a similar kind of thing.
But not often enough. It's not sustained.
No.
It's only, as you say, in the opening medley and in Hard Knock Life.
Yeah, and they've changed the lyric to "when you're a foster kid" something instead of "when you're in an orphanage."
When you're an orphanage, yeah.
Meanwhile, we get cutaway scenes to this guy named William Stacks, who is Jamie Foxx.
He's a billionaire cell phone mogul.
Yep. Who's running for mayor of New York City.
Yes.
He's a germaphobe. He doesn't like poor people.
Yeah.
He's got a campaign manager, I wrote down his name. His name is Guy Dan Lilly. Guy Dan Lilly and Miss Farrell, played by Rose Byrne. Both actors that I like, that I'm like,
why are you in this?
Well, not only that, there's a lot of, Rose Byrne is given a lot of lines where she's like fumbling her, she's awkward about talking about her relationships or her life and stuff, and it just goes on and on.
It's meant to endear. It doesn't endear.
No.
It's not endearing. It's frustrating. Rose Byrne, incidentally, another honourable mention. She was in Mutant Mayhem, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
As the crocodile.
That's right.
Leatherhead.
Yes, that's right. That is right. Yes. Is she in an X-Men movie or something too?
Yes, she is, but we haven't got to them
Okay.
yet. But you're right. She does. She's in... she plays Moira McTaggart.
Does she? Okay. Maybe I didn't see those ones.
I think in First Class and
okay, I have seen
Days of
First
Future
Class.
Past.
All right, okay. Okay, so he's running for mayor. They're like, hey, you need to go feed these guys at a soup kitchen. You know, it's that kind of stuff. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't like poor people.
No, not very, it's not really winning me over.
No, but, again, so we don't have a Daddy Warbucks in this movie. We have William Stax.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that Stax is a good Harold Gray name. That's the kind of name he'd come back for, a guy that has stacks of money.
That's completely fair.
And I do like that he is not Daddy Warbucks, because Daddy Warbucks in 82 is nothing like Daddy Warbucks from the comic strips. I'm like, great, this is a different character. Should I care that Daddy Warbucks is not in it at all? No, because he's hardly in the comic strip. Most of the time, Annie goes off by herself. Daddy Warbucks comes back for 4 strips and says, I gotta go to Europe again.
2 good points.
Yeah. So I actually didn't mind that they replaced him, and also the Warbucks name wouldn't make any sense.
No, because
unless he was making money off like the
Iraq War.
Yeah, Iraq War, Afghanistan, something like that. Okay, so there's a scene where he's running this kind of soup kitchen. He's feeding mashed potatoes to poor people.
Yes.
And somebody confronts him, is like, have you ever eaten mashed potatoes?
And then it's like when Mr. Burns eats a three-eyed fish.
Yes,
in
exactly.
that episode of The Simpsons.
Yeah.
He spits the mashed potatoes all over the poor person. There's a lot of hilarious spit takes.
There is one that made me laugh, but it wasn't not this one for sure. Absolutely not for sure.
Right. Jamie Foxx is doing a lot of spit takes in this movie.
Yes. One of them is really good.
Funny.
We'll get to it.
Good.
Most of them are not.
I have no idea. It's completely up in the air which one you found funny.
Because it was the most unexpected one. Anyway, meanwhile, back at the foster home, Cameron Diaz is getting $157 a week per kid.
Per fostered child, yeah.
Right. So an inspector is coming over, a social worker.
This guy... I have enormous respect for this actor.
Yeah.
Because he has to pretend to be completely uninterested in Cameron Diaz hitting on him.
I thought they were going to play him off as homosexual or something. And there's no... we never go that way.
No, it doesn't, because the film wants us to believe sincerely that Cameron Diaz is an unattractive sloppy drunk.
But the other thing is, she's coming on to him specifically, not because she's a man-eater, but specifically because she's trying to protect her...
Good point.
Her business.
She's not after anything but a
because there's a guy who runs a shop down the street that Annie sometimes does work at,
and she's not about
him. She's not interested in him. Whereas in 82, or maybe in the musical, I'm not sure, she jumps on the laundry guy and the cop, even though she can't get anything from the laundry guy.
It's not so much in the musical, it's specifically an 82 thing.
Right, okay.
That Carol Burnett absolutely sells.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Anyway, shout out to that actor, because he had a difficult job.
Yeah. Okay, so while this social worker is there, he accidentally drops a sheet of paper which has all the kids' social security numbers on there. And they look at it, and Annie gets hers, and she decides she's going to go down to the records office and find out where her parents are, who her parents are, any information
There's a problem here already, because Annie supposedly recognized...
Yes.
There's a problem here.
Yeah, which we'll get to, yes.
So then Annie goes down to the records office. She has this form that she's completely filled out. But first she goes to that shop run by Lou, her friend Lou. Ah, yes.
She does some odd jobs for him to get $44 that she needs to pay the fee for to the registrar's office.
Yes.
So this is another hard work scene where it's like, work hard, make $40 kind of thing.
It's very grey, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah. Except in in Grey, Lou would get sick and she would run the shop.
Yeah. Or she would
for
bail
several
him out
months
with money that she'd had all
That's
along.
right. That's right.
From
Yes.
she'd never spent.
Yes.
She'd instead been eating on the backs of some other people.
And on the
in
screen,
Cosmic City, when she pays their mortgage,
yeah,
she'd been eating their food for weeks at that point.
That's right. So on the TV, they see one of Stack's speeches where he's talking about, he says, I believe in hard work.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Okay, so she goes to the records office. She meets this lady who's the interesting character actor that I mentioned before, who's behind the desk. And
She's great. I looked her up. She's not in any other movies.
I looked her up and I couldn't even recognize her from anything she'd been in. She had a very familiar face for some reason.
Yes.
Anyway,
So Annie knows down to the decimal point exactly what form she needs, exactly how much money it's going to cost.
And she's filled out the form completely, including forging Miss Hannigan's signature on it.
And yet so she's completely... And here's another problem I have with the film. The film sometimes can't decide from scene to scene, and sometimes within a scene, whether Annie is supposed to be worldly or naive.
Right.
So here she's worldly.
Yep.
She knows the social security system better than the woman behind the desk. She's already anticipating what the woman's going to say. She's got everything ready. And yet in the same scene, she doesn't know what no further data means.
Yes, that was bizarre. You don't know what the meaning of no further data is?
You know everything about the social security system in New York, but you don't know what the words no further data mean?
Yeah.
There's another scene like that later on as well, which I'll get to.
Yeah.
So Annie sometimes is street smart, which I feel is a bit of a cliche considering she's a person of colour.
Well, isn't it worse that the reveal later on? You know,
we're tiptoeing around this.
Yes. Maybe we should just say it. Let's just say it. It's revealed later on that she's illiterate.
Yes.
So now we have a question of how has she filled out this form? How did she read her own name on the sheet with social security numbers?
Yes. How does she know what it signified?
Now, what are we got a black character that's illiterate? This is
and what's more,
a little bit dicey.
And also, it doesn't pay off because it's never explored. It's not a plot. It's not a plot point.
No, it's not. And you know what?
It doesn't go.
I actually, when it was revealed, I was like, it was a moment I actually liked in the movie. I was like, oh, this is something different that's happening.
Yeah, it's different.
You know what? It's
the problem is it doesn't pay off.
No, the payoff is Rocky 1 and Rocky 2, right? In Rocky, when Rocky it's never said that he's illiterate in the first one, but it's really obvious. Then he's like, could you just tell me where this address is? That it's written on a piece of paper, you know? And it becomes clear that this guy's illiterate. In the second one, I think it's the second one where he's reading to Adrian while she's in the hospital, and he teaches himself to read so he can read to her. That's a payoff. There's no payoff here except for one shot at the end where
he's opening a literacy center. What is that? What is a literacy center? Do these exist?
Does it need to be that school? Does that need to be that big and expensive? Really?
Isn't that just called a school?
I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't go anywhere. It's a dead end kind of plot point. It doesn't contribute to the film in any way.
Yeah.
And as you say, it just feels a bit on the nose.
Yeah.
So sometimes she's naive. She can't read. People take advantage of her. At other times, she's just knows exactly what's going on. She's telling the adults how they should be running their business. She says in a later scene, what's the hustle to Will Stacks? You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
She can't be street smart and an ingenue.
Yeah.
I found that discombobulating.
Yeah. So when she gets these records back that says there's no data about her parents, there's a scene where she drops it in the sheet in the gutter, and she sees a reflection. And then we get the Tomorrow song. And then the arrangement is it's been modernized completely. And this is really, we're 24 minutes into the movie when we get this song. Yeah. Which is really, I think, the climactic song. It's like the centerpiece of the.
I don't know why it's so early. I think it's just because they feel like they got to have. The songs.
It's one of these. I'm trying to.
And it's so schmaltzy as well.
It's like a modernized thing, like you see in any kind of modernized version where they're just saying, we're getting that out of the way. Like,
oh yeah, that might be it too.
You know what I mean?
You came here for tomorrow, so we'll just get this out of the way 20 minutes in.
Like, that's not
we move on
important
to
or
our crap
something.
songs that we've written for the film.
Yeah,
I want to say...
And it's a modernized arrangement, and we don't get it again. It's like there's barely any reprises of it until the end credits.
You're right. They're just getting... I think you're right. I think they're just getting it out the way. Also, this scene is unbearably schmaltzy. She
keeps seeing, like, visions of her parents and her as a baby.
Yeah.
And, like, reflections on, like, car windows. It looked CG'd for some reason.
It is CG. Because
why?
it is, right.
Why not just have an actor back there holding a kid? Bizarre.
Oh, no.
So weird.
It'd be so easy to do if you just get actors, but I suppose they thought it was even easier to just pay some CG team to superimpose them in. Also, I'd already noticed in It's a Hard Knock Life, but here, I think it's this song where it became obvious that this film's soundtrack aggressively uses auto-tune.
Right.
And it's ugly. Ugly.
I had a problem with it in the sense that, I had a problem with show tunes in the first place, right? Like last week. I was like, I'm not into show tunes. But I'm even less into modern hip-hop. So this is like music...
Yeah.
To me, this is like all music for young girls. It's just not my scene.
Right.
So I really had trouble. As I said, I remember the Tomorrow song from having watched the movie at the cinema in 1982. I would never have remembered this one.
No, nothing in it.
5 hours later.
None of the songs are memorable unless they're from the musical. And I think part of the charm of Annie is having kids singing some of the big numbers.
Yeah.
And their raw, kind of unpolished vocals. Like they're clearly children singing it. And yet, in this film, they smooth it all over with autotune. And it's so noticeable.
Right.
You can't miss it.
Right.
It's not just that Rose Byrne's can't sing, Jamie Foxx.
There's even a problem with the mix where you can tell that the sound is... You can tell they're lip-syncing it.
Yes.
Which I didn't get that sense from the 82 version.
No.
They must have worked very hard on it to get it synced up in 82. They just didn't give a fuck.
Because they don't care... I don't understand why this movie got made, because they clearly don't like Annie.
Yeah.
And they don't like musicals.
Yeah.
Because Miss Hannigan's saying, "Why are you all singing at me?"
Yeah.
And they don't... and they just
she even gives a speech about musicals at some point in the movie, right?
Like that they're stupid.
Yeah.
And you're stupid if you go and see one or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they just smooth it all out. I really found the auto-tuning... it was auto-tuning more obvious in 2014. I found it really, really obnoxious.
Yeah.
Incredibly obnoxious.
Yeah. So while she's out on the street, she notices Sandy the dog being chased by these bullies, a bit like the 82 version. But in this version, she doesn't catch them and beat up the bullies and then saves the dog. The dog escapes. She has a chance encounter with Will Stacks because his car is broken down. He saves her from being hit by a truck while she's running after
Incidentally, the way his car broke down, was this the best they could do? His car broke down because they installed an
eco engine of some sort in there, right?
I think they say experimental engine. Okay, I don't know a lot about cars, but I don't think you can just take out the engine and put in an experimental one.
Yeah. No, and he's not a Musk type, right? He's not developing cars. He's a cell phone guy.
Yeah. Well, it's implied that it was Guy... It
was Guy's idea.
It was Guy's idea to make him look eco-friendly.
Right, okay.
But was it just have a normal breakdown?
Yeah, or
just have him stop and want to go for a walk, which is what he does anyway.
Yes.
Don't have an experimental engine.
Yeah. So he rescues Annie. This counteracts the
bad press.
The bad press he got from the food kitchen scene.
Yes, because here we have our up-to-date social media contrivance. Jamie Foxx, Will Stacks' political campaign seems to be utterly dependent on new media.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what he says or does unless it's being tweeted or Instagrammed or posted on a blog. Those are the only things that determine his poll numbers.
Right.
So here, because he saved Annie and because a guy had his cell phone out and was filming him at the time, he's gone up 5 points in the polls.
Right. And Bobby Cannavale is like, hey, because he's obsessed with this campaign and getting Stax to win.
Well, he'll get a big payout if he...
That's right. So
then he'll be on Easy Street, Kumar.
Yes. So he's like, well, you gotta have lunch with this kid. We gotta find this kid and you gotta have lunch with her. So they pick her up. Miss Farrell, Rose Byrne, goes down there, picks Annie up in a limo, and brings her to the high-rise office building. And when she gets out, Guy calls her Little Orphan Annie, and she says, I'm not an orphan, I'm a foster kid.
Interesting. Does this mean that Little Orphan Annie, the comic, is real in...
No. I think he just called her a Little Orphan Annie. Okay. But I think it's a nod to the comic strip, which we did. They never said Little Orphan Annie in the 82 version. No. There was a variation on it.
Yeah.
So they arrive in the limo. She has lunch with Stax.
Yeah.
This is the scene where...
She's really canny again. This is one of the moments where she's canny. She knows that
he's doing this for publicity, right?
Yes. So she keeps putting her back to the cameras. Yeah. And then, and yet in the same scene, she doesn't understand how she sort of asks him, "Oh, is this how you're going to get elected?" Sincerely, right. Whereas at the same time, she's supposed to be aware that the photographers are there because he wants something from her. In the same scene,
yeah, and they're really speaking out loud. And I can't tell if the reporters there can hear their conversation or not. They're just speaking
right
normally.
there.
They're not whispering or anything. I didn't know quite what was going on here. So then at some point it's suggested that she should live with him for a week.
She says it. So
and then she said, if I lived with you, you could be president.
Yeah. And then
as a joke.
Guy,
and he does a
Guy
spit
jumps
take.
right on
that was the spit take that I laughed at.
Okay. And then Guy, what's his name?
Guy Dan Lilly,
the sleazy, Roy Cohn kind of character, jumps right on it.
Yeah.
Says, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she moves in. We get another awful hip-hop rendition of a classic Annie tune. In this case, I'm Gonna Like It Here. It's terrible.
Well, the social worker comes in because in order to live there, his place needs to be evaluated.
I like the social worker.
So they bring the social worker in. She's coming on to Stax in the way that Hannigan did in the previous version. It's kind of like...
Although Hannigan also hits on Stax.
She also does, yes. Yes. And then we get I think I'm going to like here, I didn't like this version. It was kind of...
horrible.
And there weren't 100 servants around doing that dance routine, which I kind of complained about last week. But it's like there's no spectacle here.
It's because it's a smart house.
Yeah, I guess we're supposed to think it's awesome that it's like he says pots and pans and then the pots and pans drawer opens by itself. Like that kind of... I don't care.
No.
I don't really care about this guy's wealth. You know what? Yeah. There's a specific moment. There's a scene in the 82 version during the I think I'm going to like it here sequence where Annie plays the organ really badly. And here she sits down and the piano just plays beautifully.
It plays
automatically. Itself.
It's akin.
And I'm like, that's somehow the discordance of the 82 version worked better.
Yeah. Did
than having this version of awesomeness
because it's
this version of luxury.
I think because it's so polished.
It's going to be somehow. I think because it's based on technology. It's going to become dated. Whereas that 82 version was a throwback to the 30s.
It already looks dated. All of those flat screens. We're supposed to be super impressed. That Annie's bedroom has flat screens.
Yeah.
Instead of the ceiling. Mm-hmm. But the ceiling is a flat screen.
Yeah, she has like a star field.
And not one flat screen, but 6 or 8 making up a composite image. And we're already, 10 years later, the technology's already moved on.
Right.
That already looks cheap.
Right.
And stupid.
Right.
You're right. I'm looking at that thinking, I'm supposed to be thrilled by like an animated dog dancing in a pane.
Yeah.
You know, and at one point, Jamie Foxx's character Stax walks by an animated dog in a field with a deer. And he says, "That's supposed to be, that was a Basquiat." That was a
Basquiat.
And hang on, it was a Basquiat. No, it wasn't. It was an image of a Basquiat that you were projecting in that.
Oh right, okay.
Thing.
Yeah.
And now it's an image of a dog and a deer in a field that's being projected there. That doesn't impress me as being wealthy. That's ersatz. That's cheap and stupid.
Yeah.
So it's only been 10 years and it already looks dumb. And this is probably the most egregious instance of the horrible auto-tuning. Because Rose Byrne, I don't think she can sing. So, but this is a big number for her.
Yeah.
It's just her and Annie really in it.
Yeah.
You know, and they're both, it just sounds like robots.
Yeah. 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 Okay, so now he goes to the foster home in his limo. I can't remember why he went there at this stage. I think because he has gotten permission to take her for a week. But there's a funny bit here where Cameron Diaz comes out and he says, I'm not looking for temporary companionship.
Yep.
I laughed at this bit too.
Yeah.
He tries to spray like the window because he's germaphobe. He sprays it from the inside.
Yeah.
Like the window's closed, but he's spraying the
trying
inside.
to spray it with Windex.
Yes.
And then he wipes it.
Yeah.
And then the guy from the bodega shows up as well, and he thinks he's a woman as well.
Right.
He says the same thing, I'm not looking for temporary companionship, ma'am. And the guy's like, what?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
I did chuckle.
Yes. And I think there's... Okay, here we learn who the other candidate for mayor is.
Yeah.
His name is Harold Gray. So that's the other nod to the strip. In a sense, they knew who made the comic strip, and the 82 movie didn't seem to know that there was a comic strip, right?
Yeah.
This one at least a smidge, but there's some weird stuff about this guy. Like, at some stage later on, Guy Danley says he says, goodbye, Harold Gray, you pathetic non-profit do-gooder.
Yeah.
Which is like a hilarious thing to say about...
It really is. You're right, because he's... Oh my god, you know, that went completely over my head. I didn't even notice. But he was a school teacher.
Yeah.
An academic. He'd been a politician for 25... He'd like been a city councillor for 20 years before he was mayor. This is all stuff that Gray hated.
Yes.
He hated career politicians. He hated academics.
Yeah.
He hated do-gooders, and he hated liberals.
Yeah.
And yet...
That's the character that... In a sense,
Okay,
it's
this
kind of
film
like
just jumped.
It's kind of like the jabs that we had from the 82 version, where the friendship with FDR was like a deliberate jab at Harold Gray. Here they've named a character Harold Gray and made him a kind of anti-Harold Gray, as far as I can tell.
Okay, the film just went up in my estimation a tiny bit because of this.
Okay, but...
I completely missed
But during this scene, we get a scene of Harold Gray being interviewed, the mayor being interviewed by the press. And he says that Stax adopting Annie for a week is all a publicity stunt or whatever. And a reporter says, are you saying Annie is a political move? And I thought Annie was a political comic strip. And that's almost... Did the writers know what they were writing with that line of dialogue? Probably not. Maybe it's just coincidence.
I would say it's coincidence. But the other things you've drawn attention to can't have been coincidence.
No.
And
well, maybe they are. Maybe they just wrote Harold Gray for this guy and we're not thinking about the line about him being a do-gooder, a non-profit do-gooder. Harold Gray was a rich man.
The fact that the script is so crap, it wouldn't strain credulity to think that they did it all by accident.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so in this version, Annie becomes very famous because she's hanging out with this tech billionaire.
She's internet famous.
Yes, internet famous. There's a whole press montage.
You're right. She's famous in print media too. We see a lot of newspapers.
Yes.
Although it's newspapers reporting on internet stuff as well, isn't it?
Yes.
And in fact, the newspapers are showing... It's a theme in the film that the newspapers, or the websites of the major newspapers, will report on memes. Because we keep seeing, going to the New York Times or the, South China Morning Post, and we keep seeing memes on the front page.
Yes.
Because, as I said earlier, Jamie Foxx's, Will Stax's poll numbers only go up or down depending on what people on the internet are saying about him. So the mainstream press is reporting on the memes that are affecting his campaign.
Yeah.
They'll have him... In China, they have him, instead of spitting on the homeless man, they have him spitting on a dragon.
Right.
Because I guess that's Chinese.
Yeah.
That's the kind of meme a Chinese person would make.
Yeah. I guess. I don't know. I didn't follow the logic there.
There is no logic.
No. So at some point they decide that during this montage we should adopt a dog because that will bring up his points as well. They happen to find Sandy.
The same
What
dog.
A coincidence. They find Sandy at the pound they go to.
Sandy is a girl here.
Right.
A girl dog.
Okay.
Whereas in all previous iterations, Sandy is a boy.
Yeah. Don't know why.
Again, why? Just to be... Again, just to
Because of
say...
woke.
Or... The thing is, this film is so relentlessly trying to distance itself from the earlier iterations.
It's trying to be as modernized as possible. Because even the naming of Sandy... Why did they name her that? Because she's like a hurricane.
Yeah. Because she chases her own tail.
Yeah.
So they call her Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just... I'm really having trouble reconciling the fact that this film is so contemptuous of its origins.
Yes. Yeah.
And yet, there are these nods, as you pointed out, like having Howard Gray be a named
even
character.
82 didn't have those nods.
No. Or having a name like Will Stacks being a Howard Gray kind of name. Or, perhaps most importantly of all, having people being rewarded for hard work by becoming billionaires and not by, the privilege of their birth or circumstances beyond their control. That's a very Howard Gray kind of thing.
Yeah.
These two, it's got to be one or the other.
Yeah.
We'll come down at the end.
Yeah. Okay, so we get a bit of a montage, a cooking scene where Annie and Stax are alone together one evening. He's still working. She's like, let's cook some food. They have this scene where they cook together and the food comes out tasting terrible.
Yeah.
But it's just
more spit takes.
Yeah, it's just to demonstrate that they're getting close.
Sure.
Now, Annie tells the driver of the limo, I think his name is Nash. She tells him...
Played by Adewale Akinnuoye-Agbaje.
Okay.
We'll be seeing him again.
Okay. He was actually... a decent actor in this.
He is a decent actor, and he will pop up again on this podcast.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that. But she tells him about how she's trying to find her parents, and she knows that they have this cell phone network. Do you guys spy on people all the time? He takes her down to the control center of this cell phone company, where they're monitoring all the calls. I'm like, why did you bring this child that is there for publicity for 1 week down here?
Yep.
Isn't there any security protocol in place at all?
And also, Nash is the limo driver.
Yeah.
And yet he's maybe bodyguard. He's our replacement for Punjab.
He's the replacement for Punjab and the ass.
Yes, right.
So that was real fantasy. In fact, we had telekinesis in the 82 version. There's nothing like that going on here. But we do have this kind of magical cell phone world where you can just trace everybody's back 10 years.
Well, this is another odd thing. The film uncritically presents this as good.
Yeah, there's a question about it earlier, like, I bet they track people's cell phones or something like that, invade their privacy. But it's only... when we get to it, it's like, this is a tool we can use to find our parents. There's no question about invading people's privacy.
The moral question of invading people's privacy is shrugged off.
Yeah.
We have one or two throwaway lines, one from the bodega owner, the other from Nash himself, where they say, you can't trust those cell phone companies, they're the real enemy, not the government. Mm-hmm. That's what Nash says. People worried about the government, what they should be worried about is the cell phone companies. Before, as you said, a security guard and a girl who's been in the building for less than a day are given access to the sensitive personal information of tens of millions of Americans going back 2 decades.
Yeah.
And unlike, say, The Dark Knight, which I imagine we'll eventually cover on this podcast, we don't even get a cursory Deus Ex Machina kind of, I will delete this after I've used it to solve the current problem.
No.
It's fine. Because our heroes are virtuous and hardworking, they're allowed to use this data.
Yes.
It's good that they collect it.
Yes. Weird. Okay, she convinces Stax to go to a movie premiere, or he's like suggests that for fun.
This has got to be a reference to the 82 film.
Yes, because you said it's not in the play, and it was inserted into the 82 film, right?
And again, I can't make up my mind about what the fuck this film thinks about earlier iterations of Annie, because this isn't something from the comics.
No.
This isn't something from the musical. It's only something from the 82 film.
Update of the 82 film.
Yeah.
Because instead of buying it at the theater, they're going to a premiere and then they're going to the after.
Incidentally, this is a premiere of This is a premiere of a film for which there are already 4 sequels. How does that work?
That was a super dumb moment. This is a premiere.
That's got to be a plot hole.
And then they say there's already 4 sequels. Yeah, maybe if it was a book series, it would have made sense, but they didn't write the line like that.
Plot hole. Incidentally, well, the actors in this film, which is called Moonquake Lake.
Yes.
And it's supremely dumb in a funny way.
Yes.
It's Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah.
Rihanna is in it.
Yep.
And someone dressed as a mermaid who I didn't recognize.
Who was that? We'll look it up. I'm sure it was somebody important. I can't remember who. But supposedly it's directed by Chris Miller and Phil Lord as well, who are the guys who did the Lego movies.
Right.
And
these are all of the people appearing in these cameos are mates of Will Gluck, and that's why they're there, because they worked with him in these previous things, much like Michael J. Fox.
Okay, so we get this after party. There's a song playing in the soundtrack during the after party, and then we get to the last line, and this you're never fully dressed without a smile. I don't know if any of the other lyrics were the same or it was a completely new song or what, but I did not recognize. At this stage, the songs had just become...
This is a weird party too, because there's no booze, and it's all just lollies, candy.
Yes.
Was this party meant for children?
Yes.
That's late at night?
Yeah. Okay, cut back to the foster home. Cameron Diaz is miserable. She turns on the TV. Somebody's playing piano music on the TV, and she starts singing along to a Little Girls song, which I think only the choruses are the same. I think the verses are completely different, melody and lyrics.
Yes, that's right. And it's far inferior. I've already forgotten it.
Yeah. She does a good job of singing it badly, but I think they've tried to auto-tune her.
Yes, they did. Everyone's auto-tuned. It's just awful.
Because... I think she was like deliberately trying to sing it off key in a way that might have sounded interesting if they hadn't tried to correct it in post.
Why not just let her sing it off key?
Yeah. Okay. Next day, Annie makes breakfast for Stax. Tastes really bad. Blah blah. Doesn't matter. They go on a helicopter tour of all of his towers.
Yep. Cell phone towers
around town.
His gimmick is that he has better cell phone coverage than every other cell phone company.
Never drops a call. Yeah.
That's his slogan.
Yeah.
And he does that by having 5 times as many cell phone towers as all the competitors.
Yeah.
Is there some sort of large infrastructure outlay involved in this kind of cell phone coverage?
There must be, because he's got...
Are you charging higher fees?
I don't know.
In order to service 5 times as many cell phone towers?
I don't know, but he's got towers like in the crown of the Statue of Liberty.
That's not a thing.
And all over the place.
Why would anyone be allowed to put it... citation needed. Why would anyone be allowed to put a cell phone tower in the Statue of Liberty?
See, this is the thing, is this movie is... Sometimes it has stuff like Punjab's telekinesis. In the sense of we have this cell phone tower. There's like crazy shit that happens in this movie that's supposed to be realistic. Yeah. I will say, they did a beautiful job of shooting New York in this helicopter sequence. Which is all I can say for it. Jamie Foxx sings a song here about anyone can make their dreams come true while he's riding in the helicopter.
Utterly forgettable. Composed for the film again.
Yes. Now, they've got some sort of social function. I think it's an opening of some... a renaming of the Guggenheim.
The Guggenheim Museum is being renamed the Will Stax Museum.
Right.
Which is not a thing that's going to happen.
Well, okay, it happens in this movie. Of course it's not going to happen. He's not a real person. Anyway, no
one's renaming the Guggenheim Museum.
It's part of the fantasy world of this movie. Which tries to be realistic half the time, and half the time is like, we're just going to do whatever crazy shit we want. It's like, we're realistic, not like the 82 version, and yet they're doing this stuff.
Yes!
Okay.
I feel like I'm going mad!
So, here we have a scene which reveals that he actually wears a wig, like Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor in Superman.
Again, this is another thing that goes nowhere, because it's never...
There's one later gag about it.
So this was all
where
just
Rose
a gag
Byrne is talking about how handsome he is and how he has nice
great hair.
Yeah. That's the only reason this is in the movie.
It's a 3 to 4 minute... No, not quite.
No, I know why it's in here. It's because Daddy Warbucks
was bald.
This is not Daddy Warbucks. This is William Stax. Why does he... The baldness doesn't matter.
Of course, that's why.
Lex Luthor was bald. Gene Hackman didn't want to shave his head. They came up with a gag about wigs.
Yes. Here.
Daddy Warbucks is bald. You're not going to shave Jamie Foxx's fabulous hair. they're like, well, we'll make a gag about it in one scene that he's got a wig.
Of course, that's why. It's because
that's why it's there. It's not. It doesn't have to be part of the plot. It's a nod to the comic strip or the ball.
That is what it is, and that's why it goes nowhere.
Yes, exactly. Here, Annie finally puts on the red dress, which is a variant of the red dress she always wore in the comic strip.
Yes.
They go to this social function. She sings this song on stage, and then
a song that she didn't rehearse.
Right.
Yet the band can somehow.
Well, no, I think they did rehearse. No, they didn't rehearse it, but she somehow planned it in some magical way.
Yeah.
Because they look at her like, what's going on?
We're in fantasy again in this.
Others look at Annie like, what's going on? She suddenly starts singing as if she had planned.
I'm sure these guys are pros, but even pros, I think, would have trouble taking musical cues from a 10-year-old girl.
Yes.
It's fantasy.
Yes.
In this film, that's supposed to be a more realistic version of Annie.
Yes. This is also after she sings her song. Bobby Cannavale wants her to read this speech off the teleprompter.
The speech.
She freaks out and runs out.
Yeah, we don't know why at this point.
We don't. She thinks
there's been some clues, but we don't.
Well,
clue.
But at this moment, we assume that she's offended by something in the speech,
which is understandable.
She has to shill something,
which is understandable because I went back and
right?
read the speech on the screen, and it's really puerile.
Right.
It's just like she says that Will Stax is the greatest man I've ever met. He is so cool, or something like that. So you're thinking, because I was confused too, and that then she reveals to Stax that it's because she can't read.
Right.
But, yeah. Okay.
Now, at some point, through all of this kerfuffle of her running out on the street, Guy Danlilly figures out if he can find her parents, that would be a huge boost in the ratings for
He overhears
Stax.
Nash telling her that they weren't able to find her parents.
Right, okay, right.
Because they haven't been able to use their illegal surveillance of people's phone calls to find any record of her parents. And then he thinks, great, if I can... Because all along he's been about massaging his media image, specifically his social media image. And he thinks, if I can perpetuate this narrative with Annie and have Stax facilitate the reunion of her with her parents, it's good for 30 points in the polls. Mm-hmm. And we find out that he will get a big payout if he gets him elected.
Yeah. So he goes to the foster home where Hannigan is, and he says, what was her name? Like Mary Hannigan? I can't remember what her first name was.
Carolyn or...
whatever. And she gives this line about how, that's my maiden name, but I'm not married to it. Which is the same joke she used with the social worker, and I actually laughed at it when she said the second time.
And she does a wink. She goes, and winks.
Yes. So then he says, I've got this... They go to this jazz club.
Can I buy you another drink?
Yes.
She's been drinking. I laughed at that gag.
Yeah.
And then we get the scene, Easy Street.
In the jazz club, so we've got diegetic music that maybe they're fantasy dancing to, or maybe they're actually...
I object.
It's metaphorically...
It's a shame, because this should be a good scene, and it's spoiled with this illogical separation between diegetic and non-diegetic scenes occurring concurrently. Incidentally, did you notice the name of the band?
No.
The Leapin' Lizards.
Ah, okay.
Not actually Eileen Quinn's band.
Right.
They've just used the name.
They just, which reminds me that Annie never said Leapin' Lizards in this movie.
No, she doesn't. This is the sole reference.
Okay. So, the next day, Annie tries to leave Stax's house.
She assumes she's out.
She assumes she's out
she fucked
because
up
she screwed up at the big function event. She ran out, caused a scene.
Yep.
This is a bit Little Orphan Annie-like for her to decide. Actually, she would sneak out without telling him.
It's the sort of thing she would have done in the comic.
Yes, absolutely. And then she would have had adventures with poor people on her own, and she would have run a restaurant or something like that for a few months.
Paid off someone's mortgage.
That's right. There is a kind of funny moment here where she says Sandy's got to go, and Jamie Foxx is like, no, you're staying here. And then he realizes, is it Mountain Dew or just Stew? And he gives all these kind of jokey metaphors for number one or number two. Yep. And it seemed like he was ad-libbing it, and it's like, you realize how wasted Jamie Foxx is in this movie, because anytime Jamie Foxx is on anything, especially if he shows up at a talk show or anything, you just stop and watch, because it's going to be so funny and good, and he's so magnetic all the time. And in this movie, you're just like, he feels restricted, like Robin Williams in Popeye or something.
He really got Popeyed.
And this one moment is like, oh, they let him say what he wanted for 2 seconds, you know. Okay, but he convinces her to stay. Miss Hannigan is having auditions for parents to play the parents.
Yeah, in the Easy Street scene, Guy tells Miss Hannigan that, again, it's much like Rooster in the musical. Give me the deeds. Tell me how to fool Annie.
Yeah.
Or tell me how to fool. Tell me what I need to know in order to make this scam work.
Right. Okay, but I don't understand why he's so keen on this scam. I guess it will get Stax elected.
If
he will get a payout.
That's it.
But is that it? It's not. It doesn't seem like enough motivation to run this whole scam.
I hate to give this movie any credit, but he does say he's sick of being a bottom feeder.
Yeah, sure. He does say that.
He's sick of being, as he puts it, the cockroach. Because he's scum. We know he's scum. He's your Karl Rove.
Yeah.
You know, he's your Ray Cohn. He's your Roger Stone.
Right.
He's a sleazy operator, political operator.
Yeah.
He knows it. He knows people hate him. He wants out. He wants a big payout so he can retire and go and be somebody else. To me, it's okay.
Okay.
That's what he wants.
Right.
He's being paid anyway, but he gets a bonus if he gets...
Right. Okay.
If he gets Stax elected.
Right.
And everybody hates Stax because he's a contemptible person. He hates poor people.
Right.
He steals your private information.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a huge crowd of people at these auditions. There is a funny line here where she says, these aren't auditions, these are callbacks. But he shuts it down. He says, I'll find people.
Yes.
You leave it alone, I'll find them. Basically, in almost the next scene, he shows up at the office. He says, I found Annie's parents. We have DNA tests.
Yeah.
Everything.
And again, much like 82, Stax has already resolved to adopt.
Yes,
Annie
at this moment.
point.
Yes. And there's been a romance blossoming with Miss Farrell, which is from the play and 82 version.
Well, Annie's been egging Miss Farrell on.
Yes, but there's some cutesy moments like where they're trying to operate the screen, the touch screen together, and their like hands are kind of touching kind of stuff.
Yeah,
there's little bits and pieces.
You're right.
About as much as there was in the 82 version.
That's true.
Maybe.
Yeah. The 82 version did spend precious little time on that kind of thing.
Yeah. So they tell Annie about this. They have a reunion in the restaurant with these fake parents. Annie's happy to see them.
There,
Unlike the 82 version where you're like, why is she suspicious? Which is more like the comic where she can automatically detect bad people.
Yes.
Here she's just like, hey, my parents. She's really happy to meet them.
Yes.
But they say they're moving to Brazil.
Yeah.
Like the next day or like whatever.
We're
moving to Brazil.
Very not suspicious.
Yeah. At this moment, Hannigan flip-flops as she did at the very end of the movie, of the 82 movie, in 2 lines of dialogue. Yeah. Here, she's like, starts to have regrets.
I hate to give this movie credit, but this is handled so much better.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because she's free and clear at this point. Hannigan's heel-face turn in the 82 film occurred after she'd already lost everything.
That's right.
The check had been ripped up.
Yeah.
The jig was up. Here, she's going to get paid. Guy has already told her, just go home and shut up.
Yeah.
Just go home and shut your mouth, and you're going to be fine.
Here's my other question about this, which I didn't understand. She says, what's going to happen to Annie? And he says, well, after the election, she'll just get put back in the system.
Yeah.
I don't understand this. Why couldn't Stax adopt her after the election? Why does she have to go back into the system? It seems like they're saying that she'll be lost forever, but there's nothing stopping the adoption from happening.
That's true. That's true.
There are a lot of bits of this plot.
This doesn't make sense,
that
actually.
I didn't understand.
Why not? Yeah.
And also, what are they going to do with her? It seems like they're going to keep her in a warehouse or something. I don't know, until they never say where they're taking her. They don't go to the airport to go to Brazil. Of course, they're driving her somewhere, and they'd never say
if
where
they'd actually taken her to Brazil, maybe there'd have been some stakes.
Well, wait, or maybe if they'd taken her to a warehouse and tied her up or something, and they're going to keep her there until the end of the election.
Well, that seems like that's what they were going to do.
Yeah, but they never say that. We don't know.
Then, even then, why not just? Yeah, you're right. We're just supposed to assume that whatever's going to happen is nefarious because nefarious people are behind it.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's not actually that nefarious, or not much more nefarious than anything that's already been done to Annie at this point. Miss Hannigan's been using her for the $157 a week.
Yeah.
Stax was using her for the good publicity. Now these people are going to take her away and keep her in a warehouse for a fortnight.
Yeah.
Is it any worse?
Yeah. Yeah.
The film says it is, so we just have to roll with it.
Yeah, so before
You're right, there's no stakes.
The next day the parents are gonna, we'll keep that in mind for the finale, because I got a question for you.
Yep.
So the parents are gonna come, the fake parents are gonna pick her up the next day. So now we get a song where Hannigan, Stax, and Annie are all sing this song about who am I,
Yep.
kind of an identity song, which is how I thought musicals are supposed to function. They're supposed to give you like an emotional...
All character development occurs during songs.
It should.
Yeah.
Was my understanding, which is why I like that You Dumb Dog song, and let's name this dog song in the 82 version didn't make any sense to me.
No. Well, they weren't, because they were composed for the film. But
right.
I suppose Hannigan knows that she's done something... but she's been doing dodgy stuff all along.
Yes.
But her bodega boyfriend says to her, she's feeling guilty.
Yes. And she recruits the kids to help her, instead of locking them up in the 82 version where they lock them in the closet when the kids find out about the plot. She's like, hey, there's this plot. I need your help.
We have to save Annie.
The tower.
I guess if she brings the kids, people like it when you bring kids.
So in the car with the fake parents, Annie figures out that they're fake parents based on their shiftiness. And they're not really bad. They're like hired hands of some sort. They're not evil. You know what I mean? They're like, we got hired to do this thing.
It's interesting because as soon as the script's over, they don't know what to do.
Yes.
They have no idea how to interact with Annie.
Yes.
It's funny, actually. Whenever they're in the room with Annie, they obviously have a script that they're going through.
Yeah.
They're very empathetic. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as they're in the car driving away, Annie's like, so are we going to the airport now? And they look at one another and say, she's asking questions.
Why not just say you're going to the airport?
Why not? Because they're dubious people.
Yes.
That's it.
But there's a very stupid plot contrivance here where Annie comes to believe that Mr. Stax was behind this plot to get her kidnapped, because they were hired through an intermediary, through Guy Dan Lilly.
Yeah.
So they're like, as far as they're concerned, they were hired by Stax. And so Annie believes, Mr. Stax betrayed me, and we have to go through this crap.
They tell her Stax did this.
Yeah.
Because the movie... what happens here? The movie says that they know that Stax hired them. Except they shouldn't, because Guy specifically says, I have a guy that takes care of this for me so that we have deniability. Mm-hmm. So they should have had no idea that Stax was paying their bills, ultimately.
Yeah.
You're right, it doesn't make sense.
So when the kids and Hannigan get to Stax, they tell him about the plot, and he's like, well, I'm going to go rescue Annie. Guy Dan Lilly is like, no, you can't rescue her because it'll ruin your points. You got to let the world think that she's off with her real parents or whatever. And he says, your business will be destroyed.
Yes.
And he says, I don't care. And he goes off.
He doesn't care about business anymore. He cares about family.
Yeah, which is a bit...
Why didn't Guy say...
like the Harold Gray comic strip where Daddy Warbucks put Annie first.
It's a bit more like the 82 film, I think,
where
Warbucks is made to see that there's more to life than money and power.
Yes.
Why didn't Guy just say, wait 2 weeks till you're elected, then adopt her? You can have the mayoralty and Annie.
Yeah, rather than...
You can have everything you want. Yeah. It's not any dodgier than anything you've done in your life. You already steal people's personal information. What's 2 weeks of Annie sitting in a warehouse?
By the way, in this version, did we ever know what happened to Annie's parents?
No, we never find out.
Is that sequel bait, or is it a plot hole, a script hole? A failing of the script to not mention that they died in a fire?
I don't know. I don't know if it is a weakness of the script. I'm not sure it's important that we know what happened to Annie's parents. She's just an orphan.
But she denies being an orphan. She says she's a foster kid. She believes her parents are alive. Yeah. And there's a second half of the locket. Wait a second. They had the half of the locket. So
yeah, but it's a fake one.
It's a fake one?
Yeah.
They said that?
They have resources, you see. Rooster and Hannigan didn't have resources in the 82 version because they're poor con artists. They need the original.
Right, so we've got the DNA tests and everything. Right.
Guy has access to... Yeah. He bribes a judge to do a fake DNA test.
Right.
He can come up with a fake locket.
Right. Okay.
He bribes a judge.
So they chase the car in a helicopter, which is a bit like the 82 version, of course.
Not a bit like. It's exactly like.
But here's the thing about this whole plot, the question I was going to get back to. I was watching this movie, and 5 seconds after it happened, I couldn't remember how they caught the escaping fake parents. What happened?
Social media.
Right, I remember that people were tracking them, but then did they land in front of their car, or what was the exact sequence?
In a not very convincing action sequence. First I want to talk about the social media.
Okay.
So here we are. This is very 2014, the power of social media.
Yeah.
So Annie is a big celebrity in New York online. There are Annie blogs that do nothing but post pictures of Annie in real time.
Yep.
Kind of creepy. As Annie is being driven through the city by her kidnappers, her fake parents, whenever she pulls up at an intersection, she will see children in a car next to her and then will wave at them.
Yeah. And they'll post on Instagram that they saw Annie.
Within seconds.
The famous Annie, yes. And which street corner they were on.
Yeah.
Which Stax is able to use to track where she is from moment
And this
to
is happening in real time.
Yes.
Okay, no, they're going to wait till they get home.
Okay. But then does the helicopter land in front of them or something? How did they actually stop them? Did they get arrested?
The cops are on them too.
Okay.
So,
right.
Much like Warbucks, Stax is in contact with law enforcement.
Yes.
Because of his wealth and power.
Yes.
Everyone's being kept updated on where they are thanks to social media.
Yeah.
They chase them into a park. Mm-hmm. The patrol cars are chasing them down and have cornered them. And then in order to give, I suppose, Stax something to do, they land the helicopter directly in front of them.
Right. Oh, okay. That's what I guessed happened.
Yeah.
Without remembering that
and
it
then,
happened.
In order not to plow into the helicopter, the kidnappers are forced to brake, at which point they're surrounded on all sides.
Okay.
Helicopter in front, patrol cars to the sides and rear. It's a little contrived. I'm not sure you could...
Okay, and those two are arrested? And is Guy Dan Lilly arrested as well?
He's been punched in the face by Rose Byrne.
God, how can I not remember any of this stuff?
And then some security guys have thrown him out. He's been sacked.
Oh, okay. Right, okay.
So Annie runs out. The kidnappers are arrested. Annie's grabbed by Stax.
He says, I didn't betray you. She's like, you betrayed me. Yeah.
Come for another photo, she says. He says, no, I didn't know anything about this. Or rather, he says, I did know something about this, but I didn't know that they were going to kidnap you.
I didn't know they were fake. Yeah.
I had my suspicions. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know they were fake.
Yeah.
Annie's still not buying it and doesn't buy it until he goes up to the cameras and announces that he's not going to run for mayor after all. He's going to take time off.
Right. So this plot development, which had started 5 seconds ago, is now resolved
instantly.
Two lines of dialogue, basically.
Yeah.
2-3 lines. And then we get the Together at Last song. And then we get the end credits with Tomorrow.
Yep.
They've saved that, basically, for the end credits sequence.
Yep. Rose Byrne and Jamie Foxx get together.
Yes. And Hannigan and Lou from the shop get together as well. I guess so he's the Punjab substitute in this version.
Except again, Hannigan's happy ending is a lot more persuasive. I will give the film credit for that because she turned good when she was...
Right. You know, of course.
Clear and free.
Yes. And over the end credits, we get the... based on the musical Annie, and it says who the song goes by, and it says also Little Orphan Annie, Copyright Tribune Content Agency. It's the credit.
Well, the 82 one referred to the Syndicate, you might remember.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting that it mentions the musical, though.
Yeah.
Not the comics as the first point of call.
Yes, that's right. That is interesting.
All right, let's do some trivia. Okay, so this film, first of all, the budget... 65 million.
Okay.
That's a low estimate. I've seen it go as high as 78. Box office, 133.8 million. That sounds like a profit, but you really need to make 3 times as much money for a big Hollywood film. So this film is considered a box office dud.
Interesting.
A bomb, in fact. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, with all of its marketing costs and all of that kind of thing, it did not make money. In fact, domestically, it only made about 80.
Okay.
So that is the domestic American take.
Yeah.
So, no, this is considered a dud. And critics savaged it.
Yes.
It was not critically acclaimed. It seems to have been popular enough with audiences, so the reviews... Social media is important to this movie, so the kind of like the IMDb, Rotten Tomato reviews are generally positive. However, that kind of positive audience scores didn't translate to it making a lot of money. And as we said at the start of the episode, this hasn't enjoyed a long life. It's been forgotten, really. People don't talk about this movie. It's not become a cult film. People are still watching and talking about 82.
Right.
This one...
I have to say, watching this made me curious to see the 99 TV version, the ABC Disney TV version.
Well, it's a good thing we host a comic book
and
movie
it also
podcast.
made me very curious about the two versions from the 30s, which would have been based on the comic strip, not the musical.
Very much so.
I'm
Since it
really
precedes it
wondering
by
what
40
those
years.
two look like and what the 99 version looks like.
I would like to see the 99 one,
Yeah.
because Kathy Bates is in that one.
Yes,
That would
and
be very
Alan
cool.
Cumming and Victor
Yeah.
Garber.
Alan Cumming is he's a comic book movie Oblivion all-star. Okay, so how did this movie get made? So it was announced by Sony that they were making it in about 2011 because we have some high-name producers attached to it, specifically Will Smith and Jay-Z. Will Smith seems to have been involved because he wanted to star in it,
Oh.
and more importantly, he wanted his daughter to play Annie.
Oh.
Willow.
Right.
Willow Smith was going to play Annie.
Huh.
So this is kind of like After Earth.
Yeah.
Except instead of... This would have been the original intergenerational Smith collaboration. However, the film, took sufficiently long to get made that Willow aged out of the part.
Right.
She couldn't convincingly play a 10-year-old girl
Right.
anymore. So by 2013, Will Gluck was now attached as the director. Willow Smith had aged out. At that point...
Which year?
2013.
2013.
So
okay.
2 years is enough to make
Right.
a difference.
Right.
Will Smith then also bowed out, I guess because he wasn't interested in starring in a film in which his daughter wasn't also starring in.
Right.
There was some scuttlebutt about Brad Pitt maybe playing Stax,
Huh. Okay.
but Jamie Foxx seems to have been signed up pretty
Okay.
quickly. Yeah, so we've got Will Stax, Will Gluck, Will Smith, Willow Smith. There's a lot of Wills
Yes.
attached to this film.
Yes.
Yes. This film was one of the films that was involved in the infamous leak, or rather hack,
Oh.
the Sony hack that was done by North Korea.
Right.
Remember that?
Yes. Yes.
This was one of the films that was leaked and had, hundreds of thousands of downloads before its release, which
okay.
may have contributed to its poor box office performance.
Huh. Okay.
People watching it and maybe disliking it.
Okay.
Ahead of its official theatrical release.
Right.
The Guardians of Peace hack, as it was called. Okay. This film was nominated for 2 Golden Raspberries.
Okay.
Cameron Diaz got a Worst Supporting Actress nomination.
Okay.
Didn't win.
Okay.
However, it was nominated and won for the category of, and this is my favourite category, Worst Prequel, Remake, Rip-Off or Sequel.
Huh.
Incidentally, the Alliance of Women Film Journalists nominated Cameron Diaz for Actress Most in Need of a New Agent for this movie and also for The Other Woman and Sex Tape.
Didn't she retire very soon after this? Or after this?
Immediately after.
This is the one.
This was the film. This was her last film before she retired.
I feel like we've had a few of these, like Chow Yun-Fat in Dragon Ball, and there was another one, I think, where they were like, this is my last one.
She took a she took a hiatus, an 8-year hiatus. She started appearing in films again in 2022,
Okay.
2 years ago.
Sean Connery, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Well, he retired for good then.
Yeah, you can
and
ring
then
the
he
bell.
died.
You can ring the bell for that one.
I certainly can.
Yeah. That's 2 League.
Anyway, she won that
comparisons in
award.
2 weeks. Go ahead.
Speaking of the cast, before Cameron Diaz was confirmed as Miss Hannigan, Sandra Bullock was apparently in the running. However, and unlike Tim Curry, she turned it down on the grounds that she hates musicals
Huh.
and swore she would never appear in any. That's pretty much all for trivia. Shall we
Okay.
do our votes?
Okay. So this movie,
Well,
it's a
first
big nay for me.
Yeah.
With some moments that I liked. I didn't dislike it as much as I expected based on its reputation.
Right.
I don't think it's any of the actors' fault. I think it's the movie that's been built around them. I think these are all good actors in other stuff. I don't know if Will Gluck was not directing them in a way that was helpful. I don't know. I don't know why none of this is working.
It doesn't gel. In that respect, it's similar to 82 in that you just have... It's formulaic, it's schmaltzy, but it doesn't have the exuberance and earnestness that 82 has.
Yes.
Which makes 82 a lot more fun.
Yes.
And it doesn't have actors that are perfectly suited to their performances.
Yes.
The way 82 does. Which makes me, as I said, want to maybe revise my vote from last week.
Look, as we've said, we love Cameron Diaz.
Yeah.
But she's no Carol Burnett.
No.
I love Rose Byrne.
Yeah.
But
she's wasted.
But she's no... Was it Anne Ranking?
Yeah.
She was fabulous in that 82
so
version.
So good. Here she's just she's just stumbling over lines. That's supposed to be the charm.
That's supposed to be charm. Yeah, it's supposed to be charming. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I completely agree. Plus, all the fun and life and memorability has been sucked out of the tunes.
Yes, that is a key thing. Because as I said, I'm not really into show tunes, but those songs were catchy.
You remembered them from when you were 8 years old.
Yeah.
No one who watched this film when they were 8 years old.
already
8 years old is going to remember it in 30
And I don't remember
years.
the new verses, what the melody was of those verses in Little Girls.
Nope.
Like, how did that song go? I watched this movie less than 12 hours ago, probably. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine thinking that you could... Yeah. And the auto-tune. Yeah. I know I keep coming back to it, but it's so grating.
Yes, yeah. So
Awful.
all the things that are important in a musical...
have been ruined.
Yeah.
So that's a big nay for me too.
Yeah, okay.
The comic, obviously nay. I imagine it's still nay for you.
Yeah, it's still nay, but I rank it slightly higher based on what the version of myself from 15 years ago said about it.
Feel free to post that in the show notes. Now, adaptation. This is a tricky one.
Oh, this is easy for me. This is one of the biggest nays since Gwendoline. I'm trying to think of a single thing...
I said yo for Gwendolyn. Anyway, go on.
Of course you did. And I was hard against your opinion of it.
Yes, you were.
Because I'm trying to think of... If this character was not named Annie, name one thing that's similar to the comic strip from this movie. Name one element of it.
Yeah.
Couldn't think of a single thing. You wouldn't even have... If you had changed the name of the character to Sally, you wouldn't even have to pay for the rights.
No.
Because it's got nothing... And this dog is named Sandy. That's it. They don't even have Daddy Warbucks in it. There's no Miss Farrell. There's no Hannigan in the comic. None of the characters act the way they act in the comic. It doesn't have any of the tone or themes. Right out of the gate, there's a speech about how much we love FDR. I mean, nothing.
Yeah.
Storyline, as we've said, even last week, these aren't like Annie stories. Now, you can't film the Annie comic strip as a movie because it doesn't have any plots that function as narrative to anyone with any sense of how a movie works.
Yeah.
Of course you can, but it doesn't even go anywhere near any of that. This is so far. It's just much like Gwendoline, two characters have the same names from the comic strip. If you had changed those names, you would not know that it was based on that comic strip. So for me, this is a really huge nay.
Brilliant. I came in wanting to say the exact same thing.
Okay.
To me, you can't even talk about this film as an adaptation of the comic. The only way you can talk about this film is as an adaptation of the musical.
Yeah, or a remake of the 82.
Or as a remake of the 82. An interpretation that is signposted literally in the credits.
Yes. Yes.
Where they say it is inspired by the musical.
Yeah.
It's meaningless to talk about this film as an adaptation of the comic because... And in fact, in the end, I just had to fall back on what, as you've covered, the fact that it has nothing in common with the comic in terms of the names, even as far as the names of the characters. Only Sandy and Annie have the same names as anyone that ever appeared in the comic. And I can't speak to Sandy.
She's not even an orphan.
No, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's not even Little Orphan Annie.
However, I do have... Yes. Only the dog... I mean, insofar as the dog has a personality, the dog is the only character that could conceivably be...
And they've changed the gender of the dog.
And they changed the gender of it! Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how... However, I do have a niggling...
Okay.
And I do have a little niggle.
Yeah.
And it's not because of anything I identified.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you said.
Right. Right, because the mayor's name is Harold Gray.
Because the mayor's name's Harold Gray, and he's an inversion of the historical Harold Gray.
Yes.
Because Will Stax's name is such a Harold Gray name.
Yes.
And the fact that the people that suffer in this movie suffer because of their laziness and their indolence and their desire for shortcuts. And the people that thrive in this movie thrive because of their capacity for hard work, despite their humble beginnings. So I still agree with your nay 100%. Well, no, 99%.
Yeah.
But there is a 1%, and I owe it to you.
I will say even Dan Lilly's scheming is a bit like a Harold Gray schemer. Somebody comes in and is sneaky and has secret plans.
98% then.
Yeah.
And I owe it to you, Kumar.
Yeah.
You identified it.
Yeah.
So it's still a nay, but it's only a 98%.
Okay. Okay. Okay, please like, rate,
Review,
subscribe. Please join our Patreon at patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion. That link is in the show notes. Please email us. The email address is in the show notes. You can DM us on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook.
Send us an email.
I think I said that one.
Oh, did you? Okay. Send us a snail mail.
Yes.
I'll post Kumar's new address.
Yes.
This is the second episode that we've recorded in his new digs, in his new study, and it is much more spacious.
Yes.
I feel far less claustrophobic here.
Yes.
Than
it's
I used
more
to.
organized. It's actually, I think it's technically tiny. It's a little bit smaller. Tiny bit smaller.
The actual room.
The room itself.
How could that be?
Oh, we've got one wall here that's a kind of an angle and stuff. Anyway.
Impossible. The ceiling's higher.
Yes, the
I feel
ceiling is
much more
higher.
comfortable
That's right.
considering how high the ceiling is.
Did we have any recap of our previous 100 episodes that you wanted to do?
Not this week,
Okay.
but next week, for
Okay.
sure. And since you reminded me, I need to address some more
yes.
of your
Yes.
calumny.
Yes.
I believe last week you accused me of
I keep
voting
doing this, yes.
nay for Persepolis.
Yeah.
That was a lie.
Yeah. You did vote yay.
I voted yay for Persepolis. However, I also definitely voted yay for Fatty Finn, which I stand by.
Okay, next week we will cover Bulletproof Monk from 2003.
Chow Yun-Fat, he's back.
The aforementioned Chow Yun-Fat, maybe only his second and final
Appearance. Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
We'll tell you next week.
Is any other preamble? Comic is a little bit hard to find these days, but the movie should be pretty easily accessible somehow, somewhere. Even though I don't know if anybody remembers it or anything about it.
Perfect candidate for this podcast.
Exactly. Okay, next week.